DuPont, president of the DuPont Company, dominated the petrochemical market. His patents on new synthetic fibers stood to lose over 80% of its business if hemp fiber were allowed to compete. Andrew Mellon, then Secretary of the Treasury, was the principal banker to the largest petrochemical firms, including DuPont, as well as the other corporations controlling vast timber interests. In 1930, Mellon appointed his future nephew-in-law, Harry Anslinger, to head the newly formed Federal Bureau of Narcotics, now known as the DEA. Anslinger began immediately to quote Hearst's tabloid stories to continue the demonization of marijuana. Now, doesn't this sound a little suspicious? We got Andrew Mellon, the Secretary of the Treasury, and handling as a principal banker the largest petrochemical firms, the companies controlling vast timber interest, and he appoints his future nephew-in-law, Harry Anslinger, to head up a Federal Bureau of Narcotics? Well, it seems kind of strange to me. After 2 years of secret Treasury Department meetings, in 1937, the marijuana tax bill was introduced and swiftly moved through Congress. To give you just a taste of what happened at these hearings, Dr. William C. Woodward, who was both a physician and an attorney, testified on behalf of the American Medical Association. He said, in effect, the whole fabric of federal testimony for this bill was tabloid sensationalism. He stated to the committee that the whole reason the AMA hadn't come out against the marijuana tax law sooner was that marijuana had been described in the press for 20 years as, quote, a killer weed from Mexico, unquote. The AMA doctors had just realized only 2 days before these hearings that the plant Congress intended to outlaw was known medically as cannabis, the benign substance used in scores of illnesses for 100 years in America with perfect safety. Dr. Woodward, of course, was quickly denounced by Anslinger and the Congressional Committee and curtly excused. Several Treasury Department officials and Anslinger promised over and over in testimony that the legitimate hemp industry would not be affected in any way by this act. But it was. Hearst, DuPont, and Mellon, with the help of Harry Anslinger, engineered the passage of the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. This prohibitive tax, $100 per ounce, which of course today would be at least $1,000 per ounce in today's dollars, on the flowers and leaves of any variety of cannabis, made cultivation of industrial hemp almost impossible. Now, had marijuana been the real target, Anslinger would have dispatched his agents to the border of New Mexico, where the drug was coming in, supposedly, right? Instead, he unleashed them on the newly expanded industrial hemp fields of Minnesota and Illinois, wrapping farmers in red tape, busting them if a leaf remained on a stalk, virtually running them out of business. However, just 5 years later, 1942, World War II, when fibers for textiles and ropes were in short supply, the Army and the USDA released their Hemp for Victory campaign. It did take 34,000 feet of hemp rope for each battleship. The government built 42 processing mills, and the truly patriotic farmers came to the rescue, growing over 300,000 acres of hemp, only to be closed down as the government's stance on hemp flip-flopped in 1945. Anslinger always used the term marijuana when referring to any form of cannabis. So my question is, why didn't they call the campaign Marijuana for Victory? Maybe it's because the government officials did recognize the difference between the two varieties. By the way, when President Bush Sr. bailed out of his plane in the South Pacific during World War II, he was hanging by parachute lines made of, that's right, hemp. One could say he owes his life to hemp. The 1938 to 1944 New York City LaGuardia Marijuana Report refuted the idea that marijuana caused violence and cited other positive results. Harry Anslinger, in public tirade after tirade, denounced Mayor LaGuardia, the New York Academy of Medicine, and the doctors who researched the report. Anslinger proclaimed that these doctors would never again do marijuana experiments or research without his personal permission, or they would be sent to jail. From 1948 to 1950, Anslinger told the American public that marijuana was a much more dangerous drug than he originally thought. Testifying before a strongly anti-communist Congress in 1948, and thereafter continually in the press, Anslinger proclaimed that marijuana caused its users to become so peaceful and pacifistic that the communists would and could use marijuana to weaken our American fighting men's will to fight. This was a 180-degree turnaround of the original pretext on which, quote, violence-causing, unquote, cannabis was outlawed in 1937. Undaunted, however, Congress now voted to continue the marijuana law based on the exact opposite reasoning they had used to outlaw cannabis in the first place. Sources have reported over 10,000 studies on cannabis sativa, 4,000 in the U.S. Only about a dozen have reported that the plant is harmful, and none of these studies were scientifically reproducible. They say that one of the most remarkable qualities of cannabis is its safety as a medicine. It is safer than aspirin and most other legal medications, which can have a lethal dose only 10 times greater than their effective dose. Cannabis has a lethal to effective dose ratio, some have reported, of 40,000 to 1. Hey, what about the concerns of our law enforcement agencies?